The tension in the room was noticeable long before the hearing officially began. Cameras were already recording. Staffers whispered while organizing documents. Lawmakers sat behind their microphones, reviewing notes, and preparing for another public session of congressional debate. Most hearings follow a familiar pattern: prepared remarks, cautious language, and procedural formalities that rarely capture national attention. But this day felt different. The atmosphere carried an unspoken pressure that everyone in the room could sense. Nancy Mace leaned forward, flipping quickly through papers as if rehearsing arguments in her mind. Across the room, Jasmine Crockett sat still, focused, and composed. Where Mace looked ready for confrontation, Crockett appeared calm and analytical, like an attorney preparing to present a case. The chairman called the hearing to order. Opening remarks began with polite and formal language, but both lawmakers occasionally glanced toward each other, anticipating the inevitable exchange. Then questioning began. Nancy Mace spoke first. Her tone was confident and direct as she criticized what she described as political inconsistency and government overreach. Her remarks were sharp and deliberate, clearly designed to challenge. Several people in the room shifted in their seats as her argument grew more forceful. The discussion quickly moved beyond routine policy commentary and towards something more personal. Crockett listened quietly, writing notes and occasionally looking up with steady focus. She showed no outward reaction, which only seemed to heighten the tension. The room grew quieter as Mace emphasized her points, repeating key phrases with determination. When Mace finished, the chairman recognized Crockett. For a brief moment, the chamber felt completely still. Crockett adjusted her microphone slowly and thanked the chair in a calm, conversational tone. Instead of immediately responding to Mace's criticism, she began by discussing the purpose of the hearing itself, emphasizing the importance of accountability, factual accuracy, and public trust. Her voice remained steady and controlled, creating a clear contrast to the confrontational energy that had filled the room moments earlier. Then Crockett shifted direction. She began asking questions, not aggressively, but carefully and strategically. Each question sounded simple on its own, yet together they started forming a pattern that gradually changed the atmosphere. Mace leaned back slightly, her expression tightening as the questions continued. Crockett never raised her voice. She didn't need to. The hearing had transformed into something deeper, a test of composure and credibility. After one question, Crockett paused deliberately, allowing silence to fill the room. The pause drew attention. Then she calmly repeated one of Mace's earlier statements word for word. Hearing the words repeated changed their weight. Several committee members exchanged quick glances. Crockett followed with another question, one that required clarification. The tension rose as Mace responded quickly, defending her position and accusing Crockett of misrepresenting her remarks. Although her voice remained confident, there was a sharper defensive tone beneath it. Crockett listened silently again, allowing Mace's words to remain the focus. Cameras zoomed in slightly, capturing every expression. When Mace finished speaking, Crockett nodded slowly and began connecting details. She referenced earlier testimony, public statements, and previous hearing comments. Each point was presented carefully, like assembling pieces of evidence step by step. The shift in momentum was subtle but unmistakable. Crockett then asked for a direct yes or no answer to a specific question. Mace hesitated only briefly but long enough for the pause to feel noticeable in a room filled with cameras. She answered cautiously, emphasizing context and political disagreement rather than contradiction. Crockett nodded again and repeated Mace's answer back clearly. Then she pointed out a conflict between that response and an earlier public statement. A quiet ripple moved through the room. Mace leaned forward, ready to respond, but Crockett continued speaking, still calm, still composed. She explained why consistency matters when lawmakers speak on record and why public statements carry lasting impact. Mace responded more forcefully this time, her voice rising slightly as she defended her credibility and accused Crockett of twisting her words. The chairman lightly tapped the gavel, reminding both representatives to maintain order. Crockett thanked the chair politely and returned to her questions. Each one increased the pressure without raising emotional intensity. The exchange had clearly become a contest of control, not just policy disagreement. Then Crockett referenced a specific earlier comment Mace had made and reached for a document on her desk. The small movement drew immediate attention. She held the document just high enough to reference it and began reading a quote from Mace's prior public statement. The words sounded familiar, yet hearing them spoken in that moment carried new weight. When Crockett placed the document back down, the silence felt heavier than any argument. Mace shifted in her chair, preparing to respond, but Crockett asked another direct question before she could fully speak. Mace answered with visible frustration, explaining that political positions can evolve as new information emerges. Her voice carried more emotion now, and the calm rhythm of the hearing had been replaced by tension. Crockett acknowledged the explanation respectfully but pointed out the difference between evolving information and conflicting statements. The distinction sounded subtle, yet it landed strongly across the room. Another member of the audience shifted in their seat. A staffer paused typing. The focus of the hearing had narrowed completely to the exchange between the two lawmakers. Crockett continued, speaking about responsibility in a measured tone that sounded almost instructional. Mace interrupted briefly, requesting the opportunity to respond directly. The chairman allowed it. Mace spoke firmly, defending her record and accusing Crockett of focusing on semantics rather than substance. Her words came faster now, the earlier pacing noticeably fading. Crockett listened without reacting. When Mace finished, Crockett calmly returned to the timeline she had built, repeating key dates, statements, and decisions. The pattern she was establishing had become increasingly difficult to ignore. Then Crockett asked one final question, this time focusing not on past statements but on credibility moving forward. For a moment, Mace didn't respond. The question hung in the air, simple yet heavy. Mace eventually answered, emphasizing her commitment to transparency while standing by her previous statements. Her voice remained steady, but each sentence sounded more carefully chosen than before. Crockett nodded slowly. Instead of challenging Mace immediately, she briefly agreed with the importance of accountability applying to all lawmakers regardless of political party. The moment softened the tension but only briefly. Crockett then returned to her central point. Public trust, she explained, depends not only on strong statements, but on consistency. Her tone remained calm, yet the message carried clear weight. The chairman glanced at the clock, signaling that Crockett's time was nearly over. Crockett used her final moments carefully, explaining that statements made during hearings become part of the permanent public record and shape how citizens understand government decisions. Then her time expired. Another lawmaker began speaking, returning the hearing to technical policy discussion. But the energy in the room had changed. People continued thinking about the exchange they had just witnessed. Later, Mace was recognized again and addressed the earlier confrontation directly. Her tone was controlled but sharper, defending her credibility and emphasizing that political disagreement should not be mistaken for dishonesty. Crockett listened quietly. When recognized to respond, Crockett thanked Mace for clarifying her position. She agreed that short video clips can sometimes distort longer discussions, which, she explained, is why transcripts and documented statements matter. Her voice remained calm as she repeated the timeline she had established earlier. The repetition reinforced her argument without raising emotion. Finally, Crockett summarized the disagreement in clear, measured language and emphasized that transparency strengthens public trust even when conversations are uncomfortable. The chairman moved the hearing forward, recognizing another speaker. The session returned to routine legislative discussion, but the earlier confrontation lingered in the atmosphere. Eventually, the chairman gave closing remarks. Papers were gathered. Chairs shifted. Conversations resumed quietly as lawmakers prepared to leave. Nancy Mace collected her folders and spoke briefly with colleagues, her expression serious but controlled. Jasmine Crockett organized her notes calmly before stepping away from her seat. Neither approached the other. The exchange had already spoken for itself. Outside the hearing room, reporters waited in crowded hallways. Cameras flashed as Crockett answered questions briefly, repeating her message about accountability and clarity. Moments later, Mace spoke with reporters as well, defending her position and emphasizing strong debate in Congress. Two different styles. Two different approaches. One moment that would be replayed repeatedly. Inside the now empty hearing room, microphones sat silent. The tension had disappeared, replaced by stillness. But the record remained: every question, every answer, and every carefully timed pause. And for those who witnessed the exchange, the memory of that calm but intense confrontation would last far longer than the hearing itself.